Thank you, Wendy, and thank you for coming. I'm going to tell you some about the story of how the idea of the citizen cabinet emerged. Over the last 2 decades, my team has been studying the American public, conducting surveys and focus groups. And early on, when we did focus groups, we found that whatever topic we planned to discuss, what the people really wanted to talk about was how frustrated they were with government. Eventually, we succumbed. We said, okay, let's talk about that. Well, what we heard will probably not surprise you. People from all backgrounds and ages and places see the government as serving organized interests, not the common good. They see government as dominated by these competing interests that become polarized, gridlocked, and unable to find common ground. They see this leading to the impasses, the kind that we are seeing right now with the government shutdown. Perhaps most fundamental, people ask, why can't the government act with the common sense of the people? So what do they see as the antidote? Well, the answer just springs from their lips. Give the people a greater voice. Have the common sense of the people at the table when decisions are being made. Now, they don't see this as a radical or a new idea. They see this as the basic premise of the founders' vision for the republic. Now, in fact, if you read the nation's founding documents, the public pretty much has it right on that. The founders' vision was that government should serve the common good, guided by the sense of the people. Alexander Hamilton said that the government should be, quote, free from every other control but a regard to the public good and to the sense of the people. The founders also warned about what they called factions, driven by competing self-interests seeking to dominate government. And like the public today, the founders believed that the antidote was to ensure that the public had a clear and influential voice. They believed that the public had a collective intelligence and that the people's common sense would be a force for the common good. Now, a lot of 21st century research supports this kind of upbeat 18th century view of the people's potential. The American public is far less polarized than Congress, and when people are asked to make policy prescriptions, to a striking extent, they think about the common good, not just about what's in their own self-interest. There's lots of research showing that. There's also strong evidence to back up the founders' belief that there is a collective intelligence in the public. There's been a substantial research. There's a book out on this, The Wisdom of the Public. But just as an example, if we had a bowl of marbles here and, say, 100 people, and they estimated how many marbles were in the bowl, well, there'd be some answers that would be all over the place. You'd roll your eyes if you heard them. But if you take them all and you average them, it would be amazingly accurate, that average estimate. Now, in our focus groups, we discuss what would it mean for people to have a greater voice. Well, first, people were not satisfied with just simply voting in elections. They thought that the government should try to listen to the people on an ongoing basis. They thought polls were helpful, but not the entire answer, because people don't often have enough information and a chance to really think through the issues. They were quite definitive that what should have the most influence is the conclusions that people come to when they have a chance to calmly think through all sides of the issue. And here again, they're in line with the founders. Alexander Hamilton said, quote, "It is the calm and deliberate sense of the community that should govern, not the passions." Now, in our surveys, we began to develop methods for taking people through such deliberative processes. And we, by far, aren't the only ones who are working on this. As Wendy said, that there's a whole field, public consultation, sometimes called deliberative democracy, and the work that Wendy's doing in Oregon is another example of that. Now, one of the methods that we particularly developed is what is called a policy-making simulation. And the idea is to take people through a process where they are like in the shoes of a policymaker. So they are given a briefing on the current issues. They're presented various policy options, and then they evaluate arguments strongly stated for and against each option. and only then do they formulate their recommendations. In that formulation, they also may be required to deal with trade-offs, the kind of trade-offs that politicians deal with when they're making a budget, for example. You know, and if you take standard polls, they're really not very helpful. If you ask in a standard poll, do you want to reduce the deficit? Yeah, sure. Do you favor raising taxes? Raising taxes? No, I don't really like the idea of raising taxes. Would you like to cut this program, this program, this program? Oh, no, not really. No, not really. So it seems like it seems incoherent. But if you present the public the budget, broken out, here's how it's presently organized, here are the sources of revenue, and how do you want to deal with this? Make up the budget that you think that should be as it should be. And guess what? They do a really good job. On average, then, in that context, they cut the deficit several $100 billion. We also found it was important to get congressional staffers involved in the process. Staffers from both sides of the aisle, so that when people get their briefing, it's been vetted with both sides as fair and accurate, and that the arguments that they're presented are the strongest arguments that they could possibly make. We don't want someone afterwards to say, but they haven't heard my killer argument. If they did, it would all be different. Now, all this worked well, but we found that there was still one more problem. If we did all these policymaking simulations with a national sample, staffers would say, well, yeah, that's interesting, but that's still not my people. Those aren't my constituents. So we knew we had to think on a bigger scale, on a whole new scale. We had to think of how to give the people a voice in every state and congressional district, and that is where the idea of the citizen cabinet emerged. So here's how a citizen cabinet would work. We will have a scientifically selected representative sample of Americans, 275 in every congressional district, 120,000 nationwide, who would be invited to be part of the cabinet for 9 to 12 months. Those who don't have internet access would be given it. The citizen cabinet would then be consulted regularly on issues under consideration by Congress. The briefings would be developed in close consultation with experts in Congress as well as the executive branch and otherwise, developing the pro and con arguments, the briefings, and so on. The responses of the citizen cabinet would then be aggregated and broken out by state and district so that every member of Congress would not only see the big national picture but would hear from a sample of their own constituents. The entire process that the citizen cabinet members would go through would be placed online so that the process is completely transparent. Just as importantly, the process would then be a tool that all citizens could use to formulate their ideas about what their member of Congress should do, and then they could be more effective in communicating it. When we polled the American public on this idea, it got overwhelming support. They also believed that it would be effective in countering special interests and helping Congress move beyond the gridlock and resolve conflicts. So today I am announcing the establishment of a new organization called Voice of the People. Voice of the People seeks to act on the demand of the American people to have a greater voice in government. Today we are also launching our campaign for a citizen cabinet that will seek to get Congress to establish a national citizen cabinet. Our goal is to enact legislation establishing a congressionally chartered National Academy for Public Consultation that will develop a full citizen cabinet so that every member of Congress will be able to hear from a representative sample of their constituents. In the near term, as we work to get Congress to act on this larger vision, Voice of the People will develop interim citizen cabinets in several states and districts around the nation. We believe a citizen cabinet will create a force that would guide and encourage Congress toward finding common ground in service of the common good. We believe that it would be less likely to end up in the kind of impasse that we are experiencing today, and if such an impasse were to happen, that it would offer a new means to find our way out of it. We're inviting all Americans to join with us in supporting this effort to give we the people a greater voice. And here we have some of the key people who have already joined with us as members of our advisory board. Mac Dessler from the University of Maryland is here. Andrew Klein from American University. Martin Frost, former member of Congress. Byron Dorgan, a former senator. And you know Wendy Willis from the Policy Consensus Initiative. Michael Castle, former governor and member of Congress, and Bill Frenzel, former member of Congress. Now we're going to hear, you're going to get a chance to hear from some of these former members of Congress on what they think about the idea of Voice of the People. Let's start with Senator Dorgan.